Namaste. Today I'm going to read Volume 2, Book 2, Rudra Samhita, Part 5, Chapter 45, the beginning of the war, and the conversation with the messengers in the Shiva Puran. Vakratu Namakaya Surya Kuti Samaparpa Nidaviganam Guna Samakaya Kadantai Vidma Vakratu. Miyadivis. Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Mahesh Guru Sakshat Param. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sanat Kumara said, Andhaka, the great Deja king, deluded and smitten by Kama's arrows, drank wine and started from his palace. He walked like an elephant in rut. His eyes were roving. He was accompanied by many of his soldiers. He was fierce and walked majestically like heroes. He saw the cavern guarded by Viraka. Standing at the entrance, he exhibited the characteristic reactions of a moth approaching a lamp and glancing at it eagerly and lovingly. Already the burning fire of passion had scorched him, and therefore afflicting hits from Viraka had no effect on him. He was attacked with stones, trees, thunderbolts, water, fire, and serpents. He was threatened with weapons and missiles. He was afflicted by Viraka repeatedly, but ineffectively, and asked, "Who are you? Why have you come here?" On hearing his words, Andhaka made no reply, but began to fight Viraka, when surprisingly and unbelievably, he was defeated by Viraka in the battle. When his sword was shattered to pieces, he fled from the battlefield, divested of his conceited pride. His throat was parched with hunger and thirst. He was aggrieved. Prahalada and other important Dechas then fought with Viraka. Though they were terrible themselves, they were defeated by hundreds of weapons. Finally, their minds were held in check by the goad of shame. Virochana, Bali, Bana, Sahasrabhavu, Bhaji, Kujamba, Sambara, Vitra, and others of great valor fought there. These were defeated by the Gana Viraka in the course of the battle and split into two. At the end of the fight, when many Danavas were killed, the Ganas and Siddhas shouted victory. When packs of jackals began to dance in the midst of the putrefying sweats, fat and flesh, when beasts of prey, ghosts and spirits began to roam in the terrible slaughter of slushy blood, when the Dechas were smashed thus, the trident-bearing Lord consoled Parvati and said, Shiva said, O beloved, formerly I have performed the great vrata called Maha Pasupata. The strength that I derive therefrom is exhausted, whence this fall of the immortals at the hands of the mortals. O goddess, merit has declined due to the physical contact with you. I will create a wonderfully divine and terrible forest, and going there I shall perform still more severe vrata, whereby, O beautiful lady, you shall be free from fear and sorrow. Sanat Kumara said, after saying this, the noble soul went to a holy and terrible forest. He proclaimed loudly his intention and performed penance, highly illuminated. Shiva performed penance for 1,000 years, the like of which could not be performed by the gods or suras. Parvati stayed behind in Mandara mountain, awaiting for the return of the Lord. The chaste lady, endowed with good conduct, remained alone in that cavern. She was terrified and distressed. Of course, she was guarded by her son, Viraka. Then the Decha, whose mental steadiness had been shattered by the arrows of Kama, became bold and haughty due to the boons that had been granted to him. He came to the cavern accompanied by his soldiers. Forsaking food, drink, and sleep, the infuriated Decha, accompanied by his army, fought with Viraka a very wonderful battle for 505 days and nights. Various weapons were used by the Dechas: swords, javelins, slings, maces, sharp missiles, arrows with crescent-shaped tips, arrows with prolonged iron pikes, tortoise-shaped heads with blazing steel, pointed hooks, sharp spear, axes, iron clubs of divine sorts, iron balls, rocks, branches of trees, and various divine missiles. Viraka was attacked with these weapons, and he fainted at the entrance to the cavern. His body was pierced by the sharp weapons hurled by the Dechas. The various weapons barred the entrance to the cave. Viraka was covered by the weapons and could not be extricated. The goddess Parvati was afraid at the sight. From within the cave she remembered Brahma and Vishnu. Thus remembered by the goddess, Brahma, Vishnu, and Indra and others assumed female forms and came there. Sages of great dignity, Siddhas, Nagas, and Guyakas, became women and entered the cavern where Parvati was staying. Since it was not customary to enter the harem of kings, they assumed female form of wonderful features and entered the cavern of Parvati for heroic activities. Thundering sounds of clouds as at the end of a kalpa were produced by these thousands of women. Drums were beaten and conchs were blown. Meanwhile, Viraka, of wonderfully fierce valor, regained his consciousness and stood up. He seized the weapons of the warriors and hit the Dechas with them. Brahmi stood opposed to the Dechas with the staff in her hand. Gauri became very furious. Narayani held conch, mace, sword, discus, and bow in her hands. Bidaujasi set out holding the thunderbolt and the handle of the plowshare in her hand. Her complexion was golden. The sky constituted her forelocks. In her fierce velocity, thousands of streams of current were let loose. The goddess of thousand eyes fought steadily in war, undaunted and invincible with hundreds of Dechas. The goddess of fire was none too gentle face, and Yamya was fierce with staff in her lifted hands. Neriti held a fierce bow and a sharp sword in her lifted hands. The female form of Varuna set out for fight with noose in her hands. The female form of fierce storm took up hunger from her physical body and held goad in her hand. The female form of Kubera held a mace in her hand, blazing like the fire at the end of a kalpa. The female form of the Lord of Yakshas was sharp-faced and hideous. The female form of Naga was terrible, with claws in her weapons. These and hundreds of other goddesses set out for the battleground. On seeing this limitless vast army, the Dechas were bewildered, pale in the face, excited and dismayed, frightened and dejected in the heart. All these celestial damsels, the chief of whom was Brahmasakti, and the general Viraka of terrible valor, pacified the mind of Parvati, the daughter of the Lord of Mountains, and assured her, the important ones among the Dechas and others who possess strength derived from the boons granted to them, though in their minds, of their death or retreat, and fought an unprecedented great battle with the ladies, making Viraka, a terrible valor and wonderful in intellect, her general. Parvati fought a wonderful battle in the company of her friends and allies. Thinking upon Vishnu and looking towards the southern direction, the Decha king, the heroic son of Hiranyaksha, quickly made a fierce array of soldiers with Gila at the head. He made the frontal array terrific by the force of regular service. By the time this was done, the infuriated lord came there. Clad in hides, he had the lustre of 1,000 fairy sons at the end of a kalpa. On seeing Lord Shiva arrived after the lapse of 1,000 years, the delighted woman, in the company of Viraka, fought a very great battle. Parvati bowed her head to Shiva. She exhibited great valor to her lord. The delighted Parvati fought a terrific battle. Shiva embraced her and then entered the cavern. The numerous women that had gathered were dismissed. Parvati honored Viraka by hundreds of gifts and appointed him as the keeper of the gate. Then the Asura chief, very clever in statesmanship, unable to see either Parvati or Shiva, sent his emissary Vighasa immediately to Shiva. He was one whose limbs were shattered by the weapons hurled by the gods and the gunners. He entered the cavern, bowed to Shiva, and spoke these words haughtily. The messenger said, I have been sent by him, and so I have entered this cavern. You have nothing to do with a woman. Surrender this young and beautiful lady. Usually, you are an ascetic carry on that, thinking, should a sage be offended, I have observed forbearance within my tender mind. But, O sage, you are not a real ascetic, but only my enemy. You are extremely inimical to the Dechas. Show your might in fighting with me. O wicked ascetic, I shall send you to Yama's abode, befitting the nether worlds. Sanat Kumara said, on hearing these words, conveyed by the emissary, the great three-eyed lord, the goal of the good, the destroyer of the pride of the wicked, the wearer of skull garlands, spoke furiously, burning with grief. Shiva said, manifestly, your words are fierce. Hence hasten, fight with me if you have the might. Of what avail are the wives and riches, be they ever so beautiful, to a feeble man in the world? Let the haughty Dechas, proud of their strength, come. I have already thought of this and acted accordingly. How can a feeble man maintain even his physical body? Let them do whatever they are ordained to do. I shall also do whatever I have to do. There is no doubt in this. 302. Footnotes. 302. It is incomprehensible how 4 generations of the Asuras, represented by, check my Hindi here, Hiranyakshipu, Prahalad, Virochanan, and Bali could be contemporaneous and fight together in the battle against the Asuras. 303. The Shakti, or energy of a god, is represented as his female counterpart. Each energy is personified and functions individually. The Puranas depict the gods and their energies fighting against the Asuras. In fact, the god and his energy are identical. There is no characteristic mark distinguishing the two. Here ends today's reading of the Shiva Puran. Om Prabhu Puranatam Vibhum Veshwanatham Jagannatanatham Sarananta Bhajan Putipitam Bhueshwaram Bhutanatham Shivam Shankaram Shummeshanam De Om Kapura Karum Karanavataram Sansara Saram Bhujakendra Haram Sitafasantam Hridyarvane Bhavam Avami Saitam Nama Om Nama Parvati Pate Hararamade Om Ram Sapur Sumtiram Makame Jamas Kumashtiva Jayanti Mangala Kali Badra Kali Kapanita Kavash Om Dev Mata Chaptat Om Dev Mata Shatra Sakat Hari Om Tat Sat